Yes, we are good to go. Over to you, Ravi sir.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of SCM Talk Show Season 4. I think this is after some gap that we are having this SCM Talk Show. If you remember, the previous one, the last one that we had, was also on demand-driven, finished goods replenishment. And this episode also is on DDMRP approach to inventory optimization. So it's going to be very interesting for you. As we usually do, we do a lot of surveys and then find out what topics people are interested in. Inventory optimization obviously is always a concern area of every company, every organization. So we are doing this session on inventory optimization. And as usual, this session will be recorded, as Nistush has said, and it will be made available free on Novux mobile app as well as the YouTube channel. And as our practice earlier also, we are putting everyone on listen only mode. Okay, so I mean, if you have questions, you please note it down or put it in the chat box. And we will ask a few questions depending on the time availability. Depending on the availability, we'll ask few questions. So that is what we will do. So I think that's to set the stage how it is going to operate. We will not take questions in between the session, and we will take towards the end. So we'll have some time for question answers. So it's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Mr. Ganesh Iyer, who is the Vice Chairman of SSA Business Solutions. And Ganesh has a very illustrious, career. He's a graduate chemical engineer from Mumbai University with advanced management degree from INSEAD, France. He has over 20 years of industrial experience across IT, management consulting in diverse sectors. So Ganesh started his career in the information technology field in software product development and later specialized in improving profitability by implementation of spend management solutions. Ganesh had led several change management engagements using Lean Six Sigma methodology. He trained, I think, more than 800 green belts around the world and coached as many breakthrough improvement projects. So I think there's a lot of experience of turning around and so on. So he's been passionately involved in driving cultural change along with training, coaching, and facilitating project teams for lean transformation, systematic problem solving, business process reengineering, with a focus on automation and IT enablement in areas of CRM, ERP, project management, performance management, and leadership dashboards. So I think they're very. I'm not going to talk more about him because I think we will spend 1 hour talking about him. So welcome, Ganesh.
Thank you very much, Ravi. So it's my pleasure to be here along with esteemed folks. And the learning never stops is what I see, and I learn from gurus like yourself. Like we continue to keep on updating ourselves as per the needs of the customer and demands of the nature.
Thank you so much, Ganesh. Thank you. And thank you for accepting our invitation to share your practice-oriented insight for our listeners. So I think coming back to today's topic, I will first ask the question. I'm sure many of the participants know demand-driven MRP, but let us actually, for those who don't know demand-driven MRP and is new to them, what is demand-driven MRP and how it is different than other techniques that we have been using till now?
So DDMRP. So I would say that if you look at it historically, the traditional approach was the first. What came with what we know as ERP is enterprise resource planning, which is across all the organization. The first level which got introduced was material requirements planning, which got enabled into MRP2. And that was the de facto standard and is still the de facto standard for majority of the organizations. Over time, since I think the 80s, 90s, and 2000 in India is where lean started taking prominence. And then a lot of people had started implementation of lean. And lean, as we understand lean, is all about eliminating waste. It's all about reducing inventory. Under the lean concept, the philosophy is inventory is a liability and not an asset, as against financial accounting where inventory is considered an asset. So lean always tries to go lower on the aspect of reducing the inventories and promote single piece flow, just in time, and all these other principles which are there. And then we also had the implementation of TOC, which again brought in improvement to the implementation of lean, in terms of where lean talked about how do you create flow, how do you identify bottlenecks, how do you de-bottleneck, and then go about creating pull and creating systems. TOC brought a method to do it in terms of how do you identify bottlenecks, how do you coin it as constraints, and then how do you solve the constraint, and then how do you do that repeatably and bring it into a mechanism of doing it. Around the same, which is Six Sigma and others, which talk about defect reduction. Now, if you see in Six Sigma, again, if you look at the concept end to end, Six Sigma says that find out where your problem is in the whole process, where do you have the least effectiveness, and then take that process, do the Pareto, take that process, improve it, improve the yield, and go on. Now, what DDMR is not that it has created something very different, or it is drastically different from all what we have been doing. It builds on all the best practices which were there in MRP, which was there in TOC, is there in the Six Sigma science, the whole lean concepts. So it has brought in all the best practices from all the available methodologies which are there, and create and package it in a much simpler, easier to understand, less complex way in which you are trying to become more agile. I would say it is more relevant. If you're in an industry which is doing one SKU with fixed demand, you don't need to really do DDMRP, right? So DDMRP is used in a place where you are struggling to manage inventory across multiple SKUs, where demand patterns are continuously changing, and then you are not meeting the requirements which are being set, or changes are continuously frequently happening. Then it becomes the right case for DDMRP. So DDMRP brings in the best practices of all these MRP, Lean Six Sigma, TOC, and packages it together in a way such that it brings a very easy to use. I would say the major differentiators, if you were to ask that as per the question, like how is it different? I think the main factors are, one, the learning curve which is required to understand the methodology has been codified and simplified into a 2-day program where people can easily understand it. We also have a simulation wherein a 1-day simulation through which we could understand and learn about this whole methodology very easily in a practical sense of how it is really different. What are the changes which DDMRP brings vis-a-vis the other things? And we are launching that DDBIX program next month coming. So it's a very good, easy tool to simulation, which 1-day simulation in which we can understand these differences. The second part is DDMRP also brings in the ability to, while you are reducing inventories, you're trying to increase the fulfillment levels, the SLA, service level agreements, and other things, right? So as a methodology, DDMRP has been applied both in the distribution as well as on the procurement side, in the manufacturing side. So the exact same methodology with very less changes can be easily applied across the whole organization. So what happens is different functions which are going to use, and supply chain goes across functions, right? So it goes across your sourcing, procurement, production planning, and then you have your dispatches, logistics, and warehousing, and then the distribution network. So all across your whole network, you want to have one single, easy to understand message which is common. I think DDMRP does that beautifully, and it creates very easy to understand, visible, collaborative execution models where the priorities are very easily understood in a color-coded fashion, right? So it's red, yellow, green.
I think Ganesh's screen froze for some time for me.
Sorry, I think there's a network issue.
Yeah,
Am I back?
you are back now.
Yeah. So the challenges of or in the life of a planner which exists today is understanding what needs to be done and what is due today, and has the order come, has the supply come, where is it? These date-based challenges which exist in traditional planning changes into a priority based on what is needed today and is it there or not, right? And what is needed tomorrow or in the coming week, and is it there or not? Are we correct due on that? Things which are everything is fine. You don't need to really check up on the due dates and other things. So it really reduces the effort and the impact of management also in terms of how they spend the time, right? Today, you spend a lot of time in follow-ups, which in a lean parlance is a waste, right? Because you're doing kind of a rework or a non-value adding work. But you should actually be spending time in terms of finding alternate vendors, finding alternate materials, that is where the true value adding work can be done by these people. So I think DDMRP aids to free up the time and effort of people to do more value adding work in a sense.
Thank you so much, Ganesh. And since you mentioned the trainings about 1 day and 2 day one, if anyone is interested, I'm sure you have contacts of our contacts in Novex. You can contact us. We will guide you how to go about it and about the fees and all that and the location, the hotel, where it's going to happen or anywhere. So any details you need, you please contact us. All right. So I think deviating a little bit from, little bit a different question that is it same as replenishment based reorder? That's the question. Very often it comes, how it is different. Is it like reorder point system? Because many people talk about DDMRP being a pull system. So there's a lot of confusion in people when they talk about DDMRP. And there are some literatures also people questioning whether it's same as the replenishment model. What is your comment on that?
As I said, it brings in the best practices from the replenishment model also, right? So it has taken replenishment model had a concept that based on your lead time, variability, and service levels, you decide how much inventory should be kept. And whenever the inventory dips below that point, you would create a reorder on that particular item. Now, as a concept, this has been taken into the DDMRP principle. So, and you have the concept of buffer zones of red, yellow, and green buffer zones. And it says that whenever the planning levels come into the yellow zones, then you need to replenish. So in a sense, you have the concept here, but it has been codified and modified into a way which ensures that your amounts which are being ordered and the reorder quantities and the time of reorder are more refined in the DDMRP process. So I would say that that is the advantage which happens when you come into the DDMRP methodology of trying to look at, compare with. So the concepts are there. You will see the concepts of TOC, you will see the concepts of replenishment, you will see the concepts of lean, but they have been refined and made more precise to meet the needs.
Thank you. Excellent. So I think I'll also, before we get into more details about how you will optimize using DDMRP, let's first set a stage by discussing what is optimization. And first of all, that is number one question. Second question is why inventory optimization is important to every organization. We all know that it's very important. I think we are supply chain professionals, but once again, to clarify, my question is what is optimization? And second is what is how inventory optimization is important.
Very, very interesting question. And I am not from the domain of supply chain as yourselves and other people who have been on the talk show. I run a consulting firm which does general management consulting across various functions. So when we talk about optimization, we always talk about optimization from the point of view of what is going to aid profitability, and look at it from that sense. So when you talk about inventory optimization, then when you look at it, finance is always the first one to raise the flag, saying that you need to reduce cost and you need to reduce inventories, and our cost of holding is very high, and finance is the first one to raise the flag. Everyone complains to sales that your forecasts are not right, and you asked for something and we made it and it's lying, it's that 60 days and you're not picked it up, and so the blame goes on to sales, saying that okay, the forecast, the level at which they are doing is not good enough, right? And the planner struggles between that wrong forecast which is there, and the challenges of inventories which he has to manage for making some things, because the priorities have changed and new orders, something has come in and then he has to ship out something. So planners are always struggling, and people are finding that okay, planning is not right. The supplier, the sales has given the requirement correctly, but the planner has failed. But little do we know that the planner has to plan things. There are long lead items from the raw material which need to come, and there are so many other challenges which the planner has. And then production complains that these last minute changes cannot be accommodated, right? Because production says that if there is too much variability and priorities are changing, then it leads to non-utilization. And again, my cost of production becomes higher because so many frequent changeovers have to come. So when you talk about optimization, for me, optimization means that you need to look at the whole picture. You need to look at end to end, and you need to see what is most optimum across the whole value chain, which is going to deliver least cost and maximum customer satisfaction, right? So that, in my sense, is the right way to look at the inventory problem, because inventory is not at just the warehouse or just the production or just the sourcing side of it. It is all across. So that's a sense about inventory optimization. So when we look at it from an optimization point of view, it becomes very essential that you see and measure the right metrics, right? So you have metrics right from the customer facing or the market facing. It could be simple things like on time in full, forecast accuracy, bias fidelity comes from a forecast point of view, cost of loss order, failure to service. These are all customer facing, but these are all after the fact, right? So these are things which are lag indicators, as they say, right? But when you come into the process and you want to start seeing the lead indicators, at the manufacturing side, it could be plan versus actual, how much of full kitting has happened, what is the OE levels which are there, what is the capacity utilization which is actually happening. From a transit time, you could look at transportation lead time, air shipment ratios, how much of it is going by air versus ship. So these things start making a difference in terms of saying that, okay, are we optimizing? Are we using these right? So I say that when we look at optimization, we look at the right metrics that we need to focus on. We look at the metric chain to identify the levers which are going to give us the advantage to move ahead, and then start attacking on those right levers. So that's my point of view. Optimization. We are not able to hear you. You're on mute.
Sorry, sir. I was on mute. So I think you explained a lot of it, but I'll ask the question once again. What are or what were, I always say what are other inventory optimization techniques, okay? I mean, in the world today, which people have implemented, and still they face challenges. They're not able to get to what you are defined as the optimal level. As you rightly said, finance always questions, even though planners do a very challenging job. Okay, but finance is always never too happy. So what challenges those faced, and why do you think these techniques could not deliver the optimal result? What is wrong with them?
I would say there's nothing wrong with any technique, right? It is all about adoption and identifying, is the technique right for me and my industry? It's like saying, I always say that no methodology or no technique is wrong. It's like different religions, right? You cannot say that one religion is right and one religion is wrong. All religions are the path to God. Similarly, these techniques are all meant to optimize inventory in a given scenario, in a given state, and in a given methodology. It applies, and if applied right and done right, then it makes sense, right? So it is always about, is the methodology, so whether we talk about TOC or lean or any of these other best practices, IBP and others, we are trying to identify that, is it working right for me? And if not, trying to identify what are the challenges and trying to improvise on that, right? So coming to your question again, that what is it that why people are struggling, right? So when you look at it traditionally, what is happening is forecast is necessary. It is a necessary requirement because you need to ensure how do you do your plan. Forecasting is required. But is it required on the execution level in terms of doing your daily dispatches, doing your weekly dispatches? So the time range, when it changes, when you look at a quarterly or 6-monthly plan versus something doing on a daily or a weekly basis, the needs are very different. The actions are very different. So when you talk of any of these methodologies, when you take an approach and try to see it across these different time ranges, the challenge.
I think we lost Ganesh again. Yeah, Ganesh, you're back now.
Yeah. So I was saying that when you do lean and you have to implement single piece flow, a lot of challenges come, because in reality, implementing single piece flow in the Indian context, where a lot of things are manual, Indian workforce mentality, their mindset, it becomes, and if you have too many SKUs where changeovers are required, it is not a practical to say that, okay, you do single piece flow, right? So as a concept, when single piece flow is told, in reality, what it means is go to the least optimal batch size which is possible for you to execute, right? So this somewhere the translation of each of these method, what it says and how do you implement it, this differences and the understanding at the level of implementation is where the challenges do come. Similarly, when TOC says that you need to make as per the signals which are received, right? So when you get into a pharma company and you start implementing TOC, it is a clean process, right? Every change requires a complete end-to-end closure, cleanup across. You cannot have. It has to be steam cleaned. You have to do with agents, cleaning agents, and etc. Then it becomes harder and harder for people to apply and implement these methodologies and techniques in the original spirit in which it has been created, right? So you need to adapt it to a way in which it's going to work for you. I think somewhere when this adoption doesn't happen correctly, then people lose faith in the methodology. It's not that the methodology is wrong, but since the implementation and adoption doesn't work for me, then I say that it is not right. But in reality, that is not the case.
Thank you. Thank you. I think so. What you're saying is the assumptions on which any methodology stands, the assumptions may not be practically valid in a given setup, right? Correct. And forecasting being, I think, one of the very important ones. We all know that forecasting accuracy is quite low, and there's no way to do accurate forecasting, and that's always a challenge. Always, yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you so much. So now please explain your approach to inventory optimization, DDMRP's approach to inventory optimization.
Yeah. So in DDMRP's approach to inventory optimization, I think it very clearly, as we are all been talking about it, you mentioned that, so always the challenge is how much inventory to keep and when do you need the inventory. These two become the questions when we talk about inventory optimization. What DDMRP tries to address before answering these two questions is answering the question, where do you need to keep the inventory first? So first decide where do you need to keep the inventory, and this position of where do you need to keep the inventory. Inventory is called as a buffer in DDMRP. So where do you need to keep a buffer? And the buffer is meant to bidirectionally provide independence at a particular stocking point. What it means is in the traditional MRP, when you had a requirement for a particular finished good, that finished good would explode all the way to the raw material level, and then the orders be placed to the suppliers. But in the DDMRP world, if we find that it makes sense to have a buffer of a semi-finished good, then the explosion in the DDMRP world would happen only till that buffering point. And from there onwards, it is independently the levels of inventory at that buffering point are independently giving signals further back to the RM level. So in a sense, what happens is your the distance to which you see in DDMRP for planning is decided by your decoupling points, as they are called. So deciding where the decoupling points are is again is a principle on which it is decided based on is that point. If so, always there is discussions, and you'll see a lot of doubts being raised that is it really going to increase the inventory levels because we are keeping too many decoupling points and hence keeping more inventory at a lot of places. But the fact is, you don't randomly decide where to keep inventory. You will decide to keep the inventory at a particular point only when the return on investment on keeping that inventory is going to be higher than if you are not going to keep it. So which means that if I'm going to have a long lead time to manufacture a particular finished good, by keeping this inventory at a semi-finished good, if I'm able to meet the market demand quicker and hence I'm able to get higher sales and higher realization from this. So what is the market potential? What is the customer tolerance time? Am I losing orders? You consider all of these facts when deciding where do I need to position my inventory. And then you take a call in terms of saying that, okay, this is the right place basis the calculation and the ROI on that. So the first step in demand-driven planning is deciding these positions of where do we need to buffer. Once you decide where do you need to keep the buffer, the next question to answer is how much? How much buffer do I need to keep? And at what levels do I need to have the red, yellow, and green indicators and alerts to me to saying that now my reorder points are going to trigger, and what are those levels going to be? So deciding that buffer levels becomes the second point at the buffer zones. Once the decoupling points are identified, the buffers are created, you would then plan for any changes, the dynamic adjustments as they call it in DDMRP. What dynamic adjustments mean is, you know, they're going to be seasonality, like we did in a fast moving electrical goods. Like sales of heaters happens only in winters. Sales of coolers happens only in summers, right? So this seasonality exists. So given that seasonality is there, you know that my demand is going to peak in particular season of the month. So you need that to be done and put into your planning, saying that how do you plan for that? So while you can plan for these seasonalities, it is always one trigger which still remains is when do you say that summer has started or when do you say winter is over, right? So these are things which are going to be decided by the market, by perception. So when I'm looking at data, right, and I do data analytics, so these data points which I'm getting from the market are going to do, as they call demand sensing is what the term which is being used, that are you able to sense the demand that now it has started and hence the adjustments need to take place. So the step which is very important to put in DDMRP is these dynamic adjustments. And it is not to say that forecasting is dead or it is not being used in demand driven. So it is always about, so when you do this seasonality adjustment, it is nothing but a forecasted adjustment which you are doing it. So DDMRP, one misconception or myth is that you don't need to do forecasting. That's a completely wrong myth. You still need to do forecasting. You still need to do all of those aspects. What it says is you don't use your forecast for your daily execution of orders. I think this is not clearly being communicated across widely. What it says in the demand-driven material requirement planning, don't use your forecast for your order generation. The forecast is meant for your planning purposes, but don't use it for your order generation purposes. And order generation should happen basis the actual demand which is there in the market. So that's the principle. So you get into across these processes of planning for your demand driven, then get into your demand driven plan. And the last stage is visible and collaborative execution in demand driven planning. So what does this mean is it color codes your whole planning process. It color codes all the alerts which need to be generated. There are dynamically generated alerts which come out. And once it is codified and systemized or put into a system, it makes the life of planner very. What are my pain areas? What do I need to focus? These 20 SKUs are my pain for the day. I don't look at anything else because everything else is in the green or taken care of. So that making the life easier for everybody.
Wonderful. So my next question, I think what you said is that inventory should get optimized, reduced, or whatever. Do we have case studies? Do we have data to say that, before we implemented this technique and after we implement this technique, inventories have gone down, ROI has improved, profitability increased, and all of that?
So yes, so so one of the things which we have been doing across organizations, and when we say optimization and what DDMRP says is, and even TOC and all the other methodologies also say that the goal is to increase throughput and increase flow. So if you are able to increase throughput and flow under the assumption that there is a valid demand which has to be met, right? So if you are going to increase the throughput and flow, then obviously your sales are going to go up, your ROI is going to go up. The challenge comes that you get constrained with capacity, you get constrained with how much inventory can be held, you get constrained with the space in your warehouse, and hence these challenges limit you from increasing the flow and throughput in the current state. So what you need to do is try and understand this end-to-end value chain, and then start optimizing each step. You take it from the end customer wise and then drill into the manufacturing, because unless if you just it's like a bodybuilder who does only his arms, then only his one arm will be solid, right? But his other body parts will be weak. So supply chain, when we say supply chain, if production is not going to be agile enough to meet the demands, then no matter how much you make a better planning system, if your agility is not going to be transferred across all functions, you will still become a bottleneck in that area and still fail to constrain it. So I think it is more about trying to ensure that all the functions are improving. So when we talk about the data and the points in terms of what we have done. So when we used to do lean, the throughput improvement in the factory is where, so unlike a true SCM.
We lost you again, Ganesh.
I'm back again. Sorry.
Yeah, you're back again. Yeah.
So I was saying that so my journey started from inside out, wherein when we started doing certain lean transformation projects, one of the Lean Six Sigma projects early on in 2012-13, one of the projects which we were trying to do is try and improve the forecast accuracy. In the times prior to DDMRP, the thought was if you spend enough time, you can improve the forecast. Right, and if you get to enough granularity, you can improve the forecast. And with that thought process, you start doing it, and then you realize after 6-7 months of struggling that you are fighting a losing battle. You can go from 50 to 70 maybe, but from 70 onwards, the challenge gets even harder and harder, and you try to decipher further and further, and you get more murkier and murkier. It gets more harder and harder to solve the puzzle. So that's what led to this whole thought process and journey for us at SSA, in terms of saying that there should be a better way to do this, and there should be a easier way to do this. It shouldn't be so complex as trying to do this. And that's where the whole we started seeing all the different methodologies, applications, and other things. And we have consistently seen that on application of this, we do get inventory reduction. In the electrical example, which I was saying, manufacturing, the ask was they wanted to ensure that they are able to deliver to their dealers all across India within 24 hours, whenever there is a requirement. And when we did the baseline, their availability of stock in stores was at a 52%. So when we applied the DDMRP principles, we were able to take it up to 85% through a journey which was lasted around 6 to 8 months, where we put the whole methodology in place, made sure that the availability goes up. Now, this availability to go up in the depots had a lot of elements which had to do in terms of the depot locations, the manufacturing, how much distance is there across, how do we cover whole of India, what is the distance across which we need to see. So there were a lot of heuristics which we had to do in terms of saying that where the depot location should be, where are the right places, what should be the policies, so do you just, if there is a need, do you ship from the nearest available depot to here, or should it come from the mother depot or a regional depot? What are the rules and policies which are going to give, and what is the cost associated with that one-time shipment for a requirement which comes in? So when you look at it holistically with DDMRP principles in place, then you start evolving the solution one by one, putting things into place, and then how these signals go to the manufacturing production, and then how those signals go to your suppliers, right? So when you put it backwards across and where do you decouple, you keep those decoupling points correctly. I think the results what we saw. So as I said, we moved from availability of 50 to 85. We improved the productivity in the manufacturing, improved by 20%. We were able to get more throughput. We were able to reduce quality rejections and reworks in the factory by over 30%. The supplier quality, again, we did a program where we extended it into the supplier base, because critical components which come from suppliers, those had faults which were slowing down the manufacturing. So we went back to the supplier, said, how does this system work, and how can we make the signals transparent to the suppliers so that they are aware of what is coming, what is not coming, and how the signals can be made more transparent to them. So we set up that whole system, and then the whole value was being delivered to the customer in crores of rupees, tens and thousands of crores realized in a single year.
That sounds very, very interesting. So very, very interesting. Now, my question is, what kind of investments are required, to implement this concept in terms of, whatever hardware, software? Do you need some hardware, software, or do you don't need? And another question is, if you have to create a prototype and prove that the system works, okay, what does it require for, I think we have supply chain professionals here, before they talk about investments in their organization, can they do a small prototype themselves, without taking a big approval process and so on, and implement it and show it to the management? And for that purpose, what skills they need to have?
So I think the first is the education, the knowledge on the methodology itself should be sound, right? How does this methodology work? What are the various formulas to use, and how does it work? So getting insight into the DDMRP methodology through the 2-day certification program on demand-driven planning professional program, I think that would be a very basic investment to be done by organizations, because you need to know the knowledge is to be given first before something has to be tried out. Like say, in Bloom's taxonomy, they say that that's the level 1 of thing, right? So have you learned it? Have you got the knowledge required for doing it? The second step is the skill, translating that knowledge into skill. And this is where the question comes is, can we do a pilot? right? So yes, definitely. And I think that in any traditional manufacturing or traditional planning process or existing process, I would be surprised if they are not using Excel sheets. So Excel, so definitely as a pilot, I think the implementation can happen in Excel, where you don't need to take all your 100% SKUs because that would be an overkill. Pilot it with your top 20% SKUs, which are by value or volume, what may seem right. You could pilot with those top 20% SKUs so that you have a limited thing and you're able to try and see the signals which DDMRP is giving and compare it with what you're doing without the DDMRP methodology. Right, so you're trying to see that, okay, what is DDMRP saying, and is it really going to reduce? Because sometimes it is very counterintuitive when you want to stock up and DDMRP says that don't stock up, or you other way around, that DDMRP says stock up and you feel that now I should not. So these are things where the traditional planning process has a lot of intuition built into it. Which gets removed. A lot of emotions which are built into your sheet and approach get removed when you get into the DDMRP approach, and that helps you to refine your thought process, provided you're open to receive these signals, right? Because that is the first barrier to be broken. That what I am seeing and what I am doing, and the power of buffer is also something to be understood, which is largely underestimated. People have these safety stocks traditionally, as they call them, safety stocks, and anytime it gets into a panic situation, that we are into safety stock. But DDMRP says that these safety stocks, or the red zone, is meant for taking shocks, right? And it is designed with proper calculations of understanding of where these shocks are going to come from. If all the data, if the inputs are given right and the buffers are sized properly, it will eliminate the panic. You will see that the panic which you felt over there is actually non-existent in the DDMRP world. It helps you to, so the piloting can be done in XLS. So the only investment which is required is understanding, getting yourself trained. Now, as you extend it and you want to implement it across the whole organizations, that's when you will have to start looking at, because nobody wants to work in XLS. Because why you don't want to work in XLS is because it then becomes person dependent. Because the person who created the Excel only knows the formulas, knows how to use it, and does exactly. It's his baby. That Excel is his baby. So it is very hard to give one Excel to another person and say that now you manage this XLS. So, but you can give it in a system. If it is systemized and codified, then it becomes easier. It's not person dependent. And that's when the investment really happens in saying that, okay, now what system do I use, right? So major ERP systems like Dynamics and SAP already have a configuration of DDMRP available within them. There are a ton of independent software providers who do DDMRP implementations, which has a direct integration with your ERP systems. So you would then have to turn off your MRP engine in your ERP, and then this system which gets installed, your demand generation, your order generation sequences. So that's the way, answering your question, that is an investment required or not. That's the way in which we.
Also, in terms of skill sets, new skill sets that are required to be acquired, what kind of people will get impacted? Only planners or demand managers, or what kind of people will get impacted by the skill sets?
So I think all, if you see the DDMRP methodology itself, I think all the category managers, the buyers need to definitely understand and imbibe this, because they are the one who drive the buying patterns on one side, on the procurement side. Again, on the finished goods side, you would have the warehouse managers and the planners themselves, right? So you would have the demand planning, you'll have the supply planning, and you will have the integrated planning. All three levels, we need to make sure that they understand, are aligned. Production also needs to be aligned, because the way the signals are going to come are going to change, right? So if we have these 3-4 functions, key people at least understand the methodology in detail, And for the larger audience, we take them through the DD Bricks one-day program kind of a thing, which gives a quicker, faster implementation approach of saying that how this methodology is going to work, what is going to change, that understanding comes. So the skill level are done at two levels. People who are going to use formulas, going to use the applications, going to have the working hands-on working, they need to go through the DDMRP, DDPP certification program. For people who are just going to be get impacted by it, going to understand how these signals, what it means and what it means to me, then the DD Bricks is good enough for them.
So continuation of the same question, would they impact top management also, their analytics or measurements or something? Do they need to get also educated up to some level at least, you know?
Definitely. No, so DDMRP or be it lean or be it TOC, it all starts with the management thinking, right? So unless the management thought process is tweaked in terms of how we are going to manage and how are we going to remove the challenges we are being faced with today, implementation hurdles will continue to keep happening because they are not tuned to this way of thinking, right? It's a change it's a cultural change, if I were to call it. And as with any cultural change program, you need to start at the top and then drive the change across the system. So engaging and working with the top management would be the right first step if you want to go in a structured approach. But more often than not, we have seen that it is both. You have the top management also, but a little push from the bottom where they show these quick pilots saying that we have seen the proof of concept, and then you show the talk in the money terms to the management.
Yeah, you're back now. There's some network issue, I think, in between. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was that on the management side. A response to the question. I think when I stopped is when the network went. I'm sure you have heard that, right?
Yeah, I think there are interesting questions people have. Normally, I take people through your personal journey also so that they can learn from you how your personal career journey went. And they can also see where they are currently in their career and how to take it forward. Not sure whether I should ask you that, but quickly, since you said that you are not a supply chain professional, and now you're talking entire supply chain. So, how did you land up here, ultimately, and what skill sets would you say are really required for our professionals, because every professional wants to grow in their career, whatever they have, they want to grow fast and so what best advice you have for them?
So I think it is any professional. I think it is very important to be current and be aware of the challenges which the organization is facing and trying to systems thinking and problem solving. These two skills are most important to develop in across any function which you are there. So bring about continuous improvement, right? So how do you drive continuous improvement? So any function, you need to always try to say that okay, what is the metric which I am delivering for? Who am I serving to? Who's my customer? How am I being measured? Trying to understand that, and then trying to say that okay, if I have to do this change, then what is available as a methodology? What is available as a technology? What is available as other means for continuous improvement within this domain, right? So seek out for the best practices, seek out for applications, seek out for any automation opportunities which may be there. Things which you are doing very routinely, mundanely today, with so much of RPA, robotic process automation, with so much of things on AI happening, things on machine learning happening. I think machine learning, AI are still, I will say, a little distant in India, but at least they're implementing RPAs is definitely possible, where your mundane tasks can get changed and done by the small robots or bots. and you focus on more value adding time, you spend on more actions which are there. That level of skill improvement is required. Within the SCM domain, you need to understand DDMRP is now the most refined version which is available now. The version 3 of the DDMRP, the book by Carol Pitak and Chad Smith, the authors of the DDMRP methodology. Pick it up, read it as a first level. If you don't want to invest in training, you're still doubtful about it, read that book, see if it makes sense, right? Just like how the goal brought about by TOC, it brought about the thought process. Yes, I'm facing these challenges. You're able to correlate to it and then take the action and then do it. So you relate to the characters in the story, right? Similarly, pick up this book, see if you're able to relate to the characters. Are you relate to the challenges which have been described? Are they relevant to you? Start with that skill building, and then go to the next step of, okay, now you are committed to it, invest into it, get into the training, get into certification, showcase your skill, apply it, do a pilot, prove it, see how it works for you, and then take it up. So I would say that would be the approach which I would say for any functional domain, be it SCM, be it finance, be it marketing, you need to apply this approach.
Thank you so much. I think we'll hand over it to Nistush to ask questions. A lot of interesting questions are there, so we'll take as much as we can. Thank you so much, Ganesh.
Thank you.
Nistush, over to you.
All right, so fantastic start to the first episode of season 4, I believe. We got into the details and we got into the discussion so much that we kind of, for the first time, skipped the one part of the talk show. But we'll go to the questions. And the first question from Mr. Vijay Krishnan. I think this question we've already taken. Can we? So the question is, can we get a simple illustration of DDMRP? It would be really helpful for our understanding. So I think there was a question in between where we spoke about the electrical industry and the benefit. Right. Is it okay if we skip this one, or do we want to take it up?
I think from an illustration point of view, think about it that the total inventory in the organization keeps reducing by 20%, right? So that's the illustration which we try to showcase, right? Before and after. How do I show the benefits of DDMRP is one, show the inventory value before and show the inventory value afterwards, and then you show it. We have done work with automotive where we have shown improvement in stock turnover ratio, where they wanted to see across 5 months they had a challenge. They had a lot of inventory which is there, how to move it faster, trying to see where are they focused wrongly. We did the whole analysis for them, helped them improve the STRs, created systems which were not there in terms of, they were having, what should be the MOQs which you should be really using, right? So there are the real life challenges are, the methodology prescribes you a particular MOQ, and then our supplier has a different minimum delivery quantity, right? So then how do you then mix and match these two things, requirements, and how do you solve the real problem, right? So while the methodology gives you indication, solving it in real life requires more problem solving methods to be applied, other tools, can you do a milk run? Can you do other ways in which this lower quantities can be still fulfilled and met? So solving real life problems will involve many more things beyond the methodology to actually implement. So definitely we have a lot of things by which we could showcase on various KPI how DDMRP works.
Sorry for interruption. If someone is looking for a simpler one, I think they can attend DDBricks training.
Absolutely.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, so DDBricks training is happening on 16th and 17th of June, actually. So you can just connect with the and talk about
what we are going to do in the DDBricks program is actually run you through a typical MRP run, run a simulation with MRP running as the engine, then take you through forecast-driven assessment, how it runs, and then take you through the DDMRP way of doing it to show you and you experience the real differences on these methodologies and how DDMRP really codifies and simplifies the management. It's a real quick way to get a finger on pulse, practical approach on how DDMRP works.
Yeah, perfect. So we'll take the next question, which is from Manu. So it says that malt, which is the market accepted lead time, is 4 weeks for finished goods, but parts inside the finished goods require 18 to 20 weeks. how does DDMRP help?
So as I said, so your customer tolerance lead times are much shorter, and our manufacturing lead times are much higher. Is my understanding of the given requirement, right? So in this scenario, this is where we start looking at where do you need to decouple, right? And how close to the customer do you want to keep the buffers, right? The whole concept of whether you have dealers, retailers, and other the chain is you want to get as close to the customer as possible so that when the customer thinks about something to be got, your product is there right in front of him and available. Otherwise, he's going to jump. Product loyalty is becoming less and less significant nowadays. So the minute something is not in stock, customer is going to change loyalties and see what is that, because his work is more important to him than the product loyalty. So it's very important to ensure that where do we decouple, how do we ensure how much to keep, and then keep the stocking. And once you decouple it, then everything goes backwards from that. Decoupling for your raw material or the parts within that happen at the factory level at a different level, and those get managed as they are getting pulled. So that's completely handled in the DDMRP approach.
Excellent. So we have got a lot of questions that has poured in now. So we're going to take last 3 or 4 questions, and we have asked the participants to stay until that. All right. So the next question is from Rahul. How does an organization that has both ETO and MTO/ETO product segments in implementation, will it help in DDMRP? Is there a limitation on SKU of such ETO products?
I would say that the selection of DDMRP, when you start looking at the application, there is no limitation per se in terms of what you can apply or cannot apply to it. What you need to really see is it the right approach for me, right? And what is the challenge I am facing now, and understand the methodology first, and is the challenge going to be addressed by the methodology, right? So when you say these application to made to order and assemble to order kind of a scenario, we have implemented in many places where if there are going to be consistent orders, your raw materials may or may not be customized for every order, right? So you may have common raw materials which are coming in and getting into a made to order or assembled to order kind of a scenario. So then what happens is with the decoupling, we have seen n number of times where decoupling has helped to ensure that a made to order can happen faster with the application of DDMRP principles. Very rarely is it where when you have to start the procurement itself on the basis of an order, that's when the where they say it's like an engineer to order equivalent, or that's what you're saying. So when you want to do the engineer to order, that's probably a scenario where DDMRP helps after the orders are received, right? So taking it further downstream, DDMRP really helps. But the first step which happens, again, when you break it down and see the principles, apply the concept of is it worth decoupling or not, when you start applying the ROI principles and start looking at the items which you are ordering, is 100% of items required to be engineered to order, or is it only the 20% which is sorry. So where they said that everything is made to order for us, you cannot do anything before the order is finalized. And when we really look at the SKU levels and get down to it, you'll find that only 20% are really where you change, and remaining 80% you can still do stocking norms and everything and apply it. So for 20%, you apply the rule for 80%, that's very inefficient. So DDMRP, when you look at it, apply it, you see your SKUs again, and then do it, we always find the applicability to be there.
Perfect. So we can take last 3 questions. The next one is from Krupalini. What are the best methods to put to practice for improving forecast accuracy for seasonal businesses?
Come again. What was the question? I didn't capture that.
What are the best methods to put to practice for improving forecast accuracy for seasonal businesses?
So with forecasting, again, there are so many heuristics which can be applied, and so many algorithms which can be applied, which are available today. There are certain plugins available from Amazon now for, you give your past history and then it will forecast it and would predict it. And so there are things in the US where things happen on a particular day, like Christmas, or events happen on particular days. But in the Indian context, these change as per the lunar calendar. So again, trying to map it to when these events are happening, rather these algorithms sometimes work on certain events or dates versus trying to figure out when it is happening. From the Indian context, you want to say that when these festivals occur or these seasonalities, when it is happening. So there are a lot of advanced forecasting algorithms which are available, which plug and play along with DDMRP also, wherein we talked about the third step of DDMRP, where we say that you want to bring in the dynamic adjustments to be done based on the seasonality. That's where these algorithms would plug in, and based on the past consumption history, be able to plug it into the DDMRP system to give you more better predictability and changes of your buffers.
I hope that answers your question, Kripini. So we'll go to the next question from Ram Yadav. How effective DDMRP will be for project inventory?
Project inventory. So we did a program with L&T as well at their fabrication unit, which was completely for fabrication on projects for oil and gas scenario. And we applied, while we did not apply the full DDMRP methodology, we applied certain elements of this methodology as a proof of concept, trying to say that, okay, how would this work if we applied it? And this was more at the, this was a feeder line to the main lines, where they were doing a lot of preparing the smaller components for the larger assembly. And we were able to find that by applying these principles of DDMRP at the feeder line level, the benefits which were there in terms of how they were planning and managing different items and the workflows, even it aided into the level of deciding the scheduling which is required to be done for what needs to get worked on the shop floor. So the signals which come from DDMRP help to prioritize which items need to get worked on first, second, third, basis the changing priorities. So I think there is a lot of benefit which happens in the project environment also, where it can be deployed to.
Perfect. So the last question for this episode is from Prasanna. So there are two uncertainty scenarios that has been listed based on SAP MRP, and they want to understand whether DDMRP addresses these concerns. So do you want me to read out this two uncertainties?
I'm just trying to see that question. This is by
Prasanna. So I'll just read it out. The first one is,
Yeah.
the current SAP MRP model is planned with infinite capacity, which is not appropriate. The second one is, SAP does not integrate capacity of parent and sub-parent capacity alignments. Both are produced in-house.
Yeah, so it's a MRP and DDMRP way of working is very, very different. So DDMRP never assumes infinite capacity. That is the first thing. We always work on finite capacities, and signals are given on the basis of what can be made available only. So that is one thing. And the second, the parent to sub-parent capacity alignments. Is it the same as bomb explosion is what you are talking about? I'm not sure over that, but there is an ability to do bomb explosions in SAP. Maybe it is not configured at your level to go down to the next level of bomb and other things, to break it down from the assembly into sub-assemblies and then further down to component level. So there is an ability within, but when you do that, the system gets very complex, and to manage it gets even harder. With DDMRP, the decoupling helps you to manage this much easier way than having a coupled bomb explosion. So that's my take on it.
Perfect. I think it was excellent to hear from you, Mr. Ganesh. Quite an insightful session. Thank you so much for taking out time and being a part of the first episode of season 4 of SCM Talk Show. And once again, thank you, Ravi sir, for hosting the episode. It was fun to once again start the session with you and go along for the whole season. So thank you so much, both of you. Thanks to the audience for joining in. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So we have our next episode on 23rd of June. And also, if you require any information on DD Bricks, feel free to connect with the SSA team or the Novox team for that matter, and we'll be able to guide you through it. Please spread the word in your community. We want more and more participation in the SCM Talk Show. So with that, thank you so much. See you again on 23rd June.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ravi. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.